Sweet. Well, thanks for taking time to get on our call. We've got a guest here, George, who's actually my coach. George, are you there?
I sure am. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Awesome. And so one of the things that we've been talking about as a group is format of our calls and making sure that we get some value out of this. And so Brian and I and George, we talked about and thought this would be a good way to mix it up. And, one of the things, the observations we have was that our agendas were really starting off in a boring way where we were talking program stuff and we were saving all the learning and sharing for the end. So I think moving forward, regardless, we're going to flip the script on that. And so today we're going to start with some learning, but I think before that, Brian, you were saying that a couple people, Almas, he's out of work, he's with his family or something, he's out, and a couple of the people might not be able to get on.
Yeah, Emma has a quality audit she's prepping for here this afternoon, and yeah, Almas is on a bit of a leave. He's got some family stuff to attend to, so he won't be on.
Right on. So I hope everybody had an opportunity to read that first chapter of developing lean leaders at all levels, because that was going to be the basis of this first section of the call. But before we dive into that, are there any other opening comments people want to share or make? Or okay. I hope everybody's staying healthy, and I know this whole COVID thing is throwing, making our jobs more challenging, and supporting all of our teams is also a bit of a challenge remotely. So George, you're the guest, and when we talked, basically you thought it would be a healthy thing to start with just chapter 1 here and kind of open it up. And you okay with me handing off the next the start of this meeting to you and kicking us off?
Absolutely. I think I've got a half an hour. If that's okay for timing, I'm gonna try to finish before then. But if you guys want me to stay longer, we'll open it up for questions and we'll go from there.
Yeah, and I don't know if you want to just introduce yourself and I don't know, talk about you've known PCL and worked with PCL for years. I don't know if you want to give a little background on yourself.
Yeah. Okay, so all you PCLers out there, this has been a long time since I worked with PCL. Well, actually, not really. In 2012, I worked last with PCL, other than, with you, Eric. And I started in 2004 at your NISQ plant in the fab shop doing 5S. And from there, we did that for a year or so. I was working with a VP who is now retired. His name's Gary Trigg, and working with good people there. And then, we kept on doing that for a while. And then 5 years later, I went to the Mod Yard, which is just down the street from there. And we were doing prefab in the Mod Yard with everybody from PMs through the whole group till 2012. And of course, that's when I got into creating another online business called the Lean Leadership Institute, where we have an online course based on the book Developing Lean Leaders at All Levels. So I've known PCL for a long time. I love PCL. You guys are all shareholders. That's what I love about it. So you get to decide how things go. And my key is to always bring value, but I've always loved the culture. And I think if you guys have the culture, so that's a great starting point for making huge improvements. That said, I had about 100,000 people go through my little online course on Lean 101, and from 40 different countries by 2017, which brought my little company called OEM Consultants to one of the top 50 companies in Canada as far as growth companies, and we were one of only 2 consulting firms. And what I was doing is implementing Lean across manufacturing, and then I changed that up in about 2013, 2014 into being in different industries. So everything from banking to marketing companies to, I don't know, you name it. Now I'm really heavily in the construction industry again, with my new book coming out in a year or so called Lean Construction Leaders, and we got a website called leanconstructionleaders.com, and I'm doing great videos with some leaders in the industry from different companies. Hopefully Eric joins me, but that'll be PCL, Bolt, it'll be Parsons Electric. They're not part of a $2 billion organization called Archkey, I believe, and different organizations volunteering what they know about lean for the betterment of the entire construction industry. So that said, if there's any questions, great. If not, Eric, I'd like to share my PowerPoint and then I could go through it quickly.
Yes, I'm going to make you a presenter. So bottom of the screen, there should be a little computer icon with an arrow.
Got it. And it says here, present PowerPoint file. Let's do that. Browse. I think it's coming.
All right.
And of course, look at all these applications we've got. We got Zoom, we got Microsoft Teams, we got Skype. I mean, it's endless as to how many areas.
Eric and George.
Yes.
Would we be able to record this segment?
How about I do it for you?
Okay.
And I will send you the video, and you guys maybe either let me use it or you guys keep it. It doesn't matter. If you let me use it, great. I'm going to post it.
Yeah. Use away, George. Yeah, if you're willing to record and share, this is you're giving us your time here, so that would be definitely a fair exchange.
Awesome. Okay, we're good. So that was Paul that asked, right, Paul?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll love the recording. I've done something very interesting with it. So I did a recording for my previous class just before you guys, so that I'm already set up. So this is great for you guys. Okay, let's get started. Developing Lean Leaders at All Levels. I got the book back here, and I've got a Shingo Research Award from that book because Jeff Liker's intellectual property, as well as Toyota, gives a lot of the background of that book. Now, my original book, in the top right corner here, was OEM Principles of Lean Thinking, which was about a Lego exercise. I'm sure you guys went through some Lego exercise, building an airplane and looking at takt time versus the cycle time. And then at the end, it kind of says we're all part of a system, and you can improve and optimize one piece of the system, but that does not mean you're improving the system. That was the key behind that book. Okay, let's get started with the review of chapter 1. You guys should have read it, and what I want everybody to do is think about one little thing that they could be doing between this week and next week when we do chapter 2. One little thing they can adopt as a habit that they're going to be doing every day because of the ahas that they get from this chapter. And I could share about a million things I've done because honestly, I've read this book probably 50, 60 times through the online course and reviewed it with about 200 plus students in this manner. So I kind of know everything that's in here. and I've been learning still. Okay, guys? So let's start with the chapter. Chapter 1 is about lean and lean leadership. How many of you guys read Good to Great? And if you have, that is awesome.
Yeah, I've read it.
Yeah.
Great. Look, great book, and it discovers what great companies have as great company characteristics. One is a passion for delivering value to the customers. This is a review. The other one that I really like out of this is and thinking, not or thinking. You can have this or that. No, it's about having it all. Kind of. When we look at construction, we're thinking schedule. What else are we thinking about? Cost. We're thinking about quality. And there's one more. What else is important to construction? Schedule.
Safety.
Right. Number 1 on our list. You can have it all, and that's the key. Don't go after a piece of lean. Go after the whole thing and get it right. The other one is, when you really look at this, it's about having a strong, cohesive, coherent culture. And that's the key behind this book. And that's what it talks about. And looking at the values. So what are the values? Values that go beyond profits is one of the key things there. And you have to be seriously committed and almost obsessive about value from the customer's perspective. Okay, looking back at Toyota, because that's the origin of the lean thinking that we go after. It's really about where did it come from? Why is Toyota doing things that other companies aren't doing in their field? And it started with Sakichi Toyoda, who invented a loom, who later sold it, made enough money for Kichiro Toyoda, and Toyota is spelled T-O-Y-O-D-A. Okay, that's interesting. Why not Toyota? That's another question. I got the answer on a video on the bus in Japan when I was there. So I'll send you guys that video too. So Kichiro Toyoda started the Toyota Motor Company, and they went through a lot of challenges. And at one point, they were, Ford was 8 times more productive than Toyota. And the challenge went out from Kichiro to this manufacturing genius called Taiichi Ono. I want you to become more productive than Ford. And Kichiro did it within 3 years. So we're going to talk a little bit about that in the future, I think. How did Kichiro do this? So looking at the company values, they came from Sakichi Toyoda, Kichiro Toyoda. They were put together, and it involved discipline, hard work, getting your hands dirty, and constantly innovating towards a vision. So I ask you guys, what is the vision for PCL? And if you can answer that, that's great, because if you're constantly innovating towards that, you're making little improvements which add up to be big improvements later. This genius, manufacturing genius, Taiichi Ono, had a real hard time getting the system going. He found all the resistance that anybody else would in a company. People were hired as metal workers, working on certain machines. And Taiichi Ono figured out that no, we need people doing all sorts of different activities throughout their day. And that was the first point of resistance. So he had to get out there and work with the people, basically be loved by the people, or at least respected. He was respected. I don't know about loved. He made somebody stand in a circle one day observing the area, and he forgot about him till the next day, where that gentleman's wife came in and said, "What did you do to my husband? Where is he?" And he was still standing in the circle 24 hours later. So, this guy was pretty mean, but he was very respected, and he got that respect from the people, and they made it happen. They improved productivity more than tenfold in 3 years. At the end, he resisted writing it down, and he finally put it down into a little house just before he retired, and it was called the Toyota Production System. 2 pillars. One was judoka, mistake proofing, stop and fix problems really. And in Japan, they call this automation with a human touch. It's not really mistake proofing. The other side was just in time, the right part in the right place at the right time in the right amount with the right quality. All of that is just in time and works towards operational excellence. But what's at the middle of this house is people working together, constantly improving, and having the one skill that's required by everybody, which is problem solving. So those are the kind of, that's the visual he created. We look at artifacts and we think, here's a flip chart, and that's great, that's lean. And we mistake that for being lean, but it's not. It's the underlying values that we're looking at, the norms and behaviors that create the culture. And isn't that what we're all talking about in construction? Looking at being lean, not are you doing lean? So how are you being lean? That's the big question for construction. And it has a lot to do with the underlying values, norms, and what everybody is committing to. So we're going to talk a little bit about values in construction, maybe at the end of this. But in reviewing what is real TPS, where did this come from? It's identifying problems and identifying and testing solutions towards a vision. All right, here's Jeff Leiker's 4P model, very well known from the Toyota Way book. It started with a long-term thinking, where long-term is superseding short-term results at a company. I know PCL does a great job of this, and of course there's chaos. Even the best companies have chaos. Toyota didn't think they were doing well, and they don't think they're doing well. They got so much further to go. So the comparison is, man, do you have a vision out there that will always bring gaps forward and say, I've got a lot to learn? In the Toyota, the True North, how this came about, now there's a lot of confusion, I think, between Toyota Production System and the Toyota Way. And the way I've connected it is the Toyota Way is for the entire organization. It's not just for manufacturing. And we go through the values, those 5 values at the bottom. Right at the center is something called Genchi Genbutsu, which is go and deeply observe the situation. And what are you looking for? Well, you're looking for gaps between what should be happening and what is happening, for one. And you're also looking at the gap between what it should be doing, that process, and what it is doing today. From the perspective of the worker, the manager, the area. So it's very deep observation that it starts with. And these 5 values of respect, teamwork, Kaizen, and challenge are so important. I personally migrate to challenge. When I think of challenge, I think of my learners, my students, and I think, am I challenging them enough where they're going to feel a little stress? Too much stress, not good. But on the other side, not enough stress, that's not good either. They need the right amount of stress. It's kind of like the Goldilocks zone. Not too hot, not too cold, right in the middle, the right amount of stress, and you become as productive as you can be. Now, of course, having a Kaizen mind and respect for people, which looks like so many different things. And teamwork is not just teamwork. Teamwork is also about you as an individual. Are you bringing your team up that level? Are you performing at that level where your team is challenged to keep up with you? That's all part of teamwork. And being on an A team makes such a great difference. So these are the values that we talk about around 2 pillars called continuous improvement and respect for people. All right, Jeff Leiker's model talks about the mechanism for delivering value is in process. So you want to eliminate all wasteful activities which are defined as customer doesn't care about this activity. We go into that a lot in my book, but what does that mean? What does the customer doesn't care? It means that there's so many process steps in a company, and if the customer's not willing to pay for that step, maybe you shouldn't be doing it because it doesn't add value. So that's a huge discussion. Connecting processes is the key to doing lean. Wow. So connecting processes means the vertical organization must change to become a horizontal organization. That was another item in review. So here's what it looks like. A process is supposed to be adding value to something, whether it's a manufacturing process or a service process. Everything is a process. You have to know everything is a process. Me doing this presentation, that's a process. That process has inventory upstream of it, which is called, in queue. And when you're done, you should have delivered what you delivered, which, should have added value. So unfortunately, a lot of companies have many disconnected processes. They're not connected to their downstream customer. So right now, the way I look at this, Eric, you're my customer, but so is everybody on your team. At the end of this, I'm going to ask everybody, did I deliver value? What's our Hansei? What went well during today's update, and what could have gone better? So guys, write it down now. Think about what I'm doing and what's going well during my presentation and what could be better. Linking every process to its downstream customer makes it so that, number one, you're learning if you do a check. Number two, you're connecting processes, which means they're in connection. One is connected to the other so tightly that you can ask your customer what's going wrong. So you can update the information, and problems then arise out of the process. Connected processes means that you're lowering the inventory level in one visual so that problems surface, and these problems could be big or small. They're represented by those red balls there. And small problems the team should resolve. Bigger problems should go into like type 2 problems, which require more effort, a team effort. So PDCA gets involved, and this is called Hoshin-Conry, and you might want to assign priorities to these bigger problems. Leave the small problems for the team who are responsible to solve it. The bigger problems go into this priority assigning mechanism, and PDCA, those little coins there, mean that you're assigning responsibility to those problems to a leader that has problem-solving skills. Excellent. So they go through this A3 thinking, they solve the problems, and basically, as an overall lean system, you have this happening all the time. You're connecting processes, surfacing problems. The bigger problems go into Hoshin-Conry, which is strategy deployment. You assign priorities, and at the center of all this, you're developing people. And that's the secret of lean that should have started off 20 years ago. We should have recognized that the number one reason lean exists is to improve people's capability in improving the company by solving problems with clearly defined values. All right, so when Jeff got to this one, step 3, he only put people there, and one of his Japanese sensei said, look, people, what about the partners? And he says, well, they're included in people. He says, no, our partners are so important to this process that we must have them in there. So it's people and partners. He changed it up, and you're looking at developing and growing all of your partners in the process. And finally, at the pinnacle, problem solving is the one skill every lean leader must have. And I'm going to add that if you cannot demonstrate that you know how to problem solve, you're not able to coach others to do it in the same way. So problem solving and coaching and developing others for problem solving is so key to making lean happen in an organization. How do you do that? Using PDCA. This is part of chapter 1. And then finally, a new definition for lean is a strategy for operational excellence based on clearly defined values to engage people in continuous safety, morale, quality, cost, and productivity. And what are those clearly defined values in a construction company? Look, they could be go and see, which Shingo says you should make it go and observe. You don't want to just see what's going on, you want to observe. It could be Kaizen mind, challenge, teamwork, respect. Those are great values. I've come across 2 phrases that make construction work better. One is do what you say you're going to do. How do we measure? You guys are a general contractor, so how do you measure your trade partners? Well, look, PPC is a great measurement. So percent plan complete, how do you measure them, and why do you measure them? You want them to improve. That's the reason you're measuring them, not to beat them up. And by doing what they say they're going to do and developing that reliability, you as a company get more reliable. There's one more value in a phrase that I really like in construction, which is all for one and one for all. I call it the 3 Musketeers value. So that just means, look, we're in it together. As a general contractor, I think you guys fall in the same boat as anybody else. 10% of the project, the revenue goes to you, 90% goes to the trade partners. You guys can argue with me if you like. I'd like to hear the real numbers. So how are you going to make that happen as a general contractor? Well, you all have to be in it together. One trade partner could start this domino effect of inefficiency that scales and expands to so many other areas. So you want everybody working together. The reason we created Lean Construction Leaders as a concept, as a book, is because it's a trade partner's guide to doing lean. They have to know coming in the general contractor is only as good as its weakest link. I don't know if you guys agree, but now I'm going to throw it up and say I'm done the presentation. What are your thoughts? What could I have done better for this? I don't know how long it is, 20-minute, 25-minute presentation. And what would be your homework? Maybe you guys need to think about it because I'm running overtime. So Eric, I turn it back to you.
Thanks, George. That was fantastic. And, I think if the rest of the group's okay with, running over a hard stop at 30 minutes with some time with George here, I'd like to have a couple more minutes of your time, George. But yeah, thank you very, very much for that. And so I don't know if any of the group wants to share any, plus deltas from George's presentation or feel free to share a score. But that's something that George and I typically do as a process after every single one of our discussions. Any thoughts or feedback from the team?
Yeah, I excuse me. Yeah, I read the chapter. I spent quite a bit of time on it. There was a lot of stuff that I was somewhat familiar with, but I'd say like some of the ahas that were kind of good reminders or stood out for me were a couple of things that, George, you mentioned, which were, at the core of this is developing people to be good problem solvers, which means that we as lean leaders also need to develop ourselves as good problem solvers. And to do that, we should follow, I guess, a, kind of a consistent process or at least thinking approach. And the other key aspect, I don't know that you mentioned it specifically, but it was certainly in the chapter on the importance of coaching, so that we need coaches as well. That's something I think we could probably talk about more as a group in terms of I know you're acting as a coach for Eric and Brian, or even each other. We can probably do more coaching amongst our group to try to accelerate our own development. So that's kind of one of the big ahas that I got. And I guess my second one would be just like you say, as Ono found, if you're trying to influence people's behavior to try new things, different things, people aren't going to listen if you just kind of go out there and tell them, or get them in a classroom setting and tell them, here's what you should do. Mm-hmm. We need to develop those relationships and be out in the Gemba, out on the project sites or wherever the work is happening with people, and kind of build those relationships and see things firsthand through their eyes.
Yeah. Can I say three things, Paul, to what you said? Number one, we say the coach should be the example for disciplined problem solving. So right away, you hit the nail on the head. You have to be the example for what's called disciplined problem solving. You as a company should have a disciplined problem solving approach, whatever that is, and you should be the example as the coach. That's number one. Number two, I was going to say is the world's changing. So when you look at lean now, and because of COVID-19 and the chaos, you can almost connect the learning with this internet and the coaching that's happening today. You don't have to see it all. With WhatsApp, if you add that, you could take videos and have your students take videos of, here's my challenge, Paul, and show your finger going across the screen. This is what's wrong. This is what I'm thinking of doing. I'll send you a video when I update the results. So you want to build up their confidence by, as a coach, always complimenting them, always building them up as students of this process. So there was one other thing I wanted to mention, but of course I lost it. I gotta write things down. So here it is. Look, we have the same terminology in lean manufacturing as we do in lean construction. Same activity, but different terminology sometimes. The plus delta is the same as a Hansei. And of course, we don't want to use Japanese words because that confuses people. I got to start using plus delta. So thank you, Eric, for pointing that out. And please correct me, because what we got to create is a language here that works for PCLers, not that exists at Toyota. So make it your own. Absolutely. So thank you, Paul.
Yeah. So any other plus deltas or ahas from the chapter that anybody wants to share?
I think as I was looking at some of the kind of the illustrations or with the balls and the flow charts, I kind of struggled trying to understand what they were trying to illustrate until you walked through them and we kind of saw them progress. Then they kind of clicked a little bit for me. But at first, I kind of was getting a little bit lost in them.
That's a really good point. That's why self-developing only goes so far. So number one, the lean leadership development model, you guys will see it in chapter, 5. But step one is commit to improving yourself. Commit to self-development. And you're right, Dan, that only goes so far. Because what you don't know, you don't know. Your coach, if you have a coach, should be able to tease out of you the questions you have related to what you're not getting and connect the dots. And that's the reason you want to have a coach, because they can accelerate your learning. And by doing that, you're accelerating the learning of so many others that you're reporting to. And think about the words I'm using. We all work for the customer, who internally, the customer are those individuals adding value to the building, to the project they're on, and you work for them. They're your customer. And you got to be supporting them in such a way that you're connecting the dots for them. So this is so important. As much as you want to do things on your own, I never got great benefits until I started developing using a coach who completely annihilated me with what I was thinking and what I was doing and the things I was doing wrong. They were correcting me, but I was still learning. And I learned really great. Some people can learn with the coach. Some people don't like coaches because they're too direct. It depends on who you are. And the right coach will find the right style of coaching you. Thank you, Dan.
A couple of the things that I took out of it, or I wrote down actually, was people are the only appreciating asset. I found that quite interesting. And the other one was kind of similar to what you were talking about with the whole situation now, but learning happening at the Gemba and trying to figure out and understand how we effectively do that over the next however long it's going to be, and probably into the future as we go on from this. It's going to be something different for us to try and figure out and understand how we can help support our customers, which could be our project teams, from a distance rather than actually being there.
Wow, Brian, that is really insightful. I really love the learning at the Gemba and how you're going to support your team. Number one, people are the only appreciating value. When you think about it, look, we buy a computer, it depreciates, even in the books. But if you want to do a lean financial statement properly, you're putting all these individuals' names in there and you're following them and they're developing, you're appreciating, those people are appreciating, your company appreciates. One thing I heard, Brian, I'll never forget, is that for every hour of learning, you should be doing 20 hours of doing. So I would ask you, as lean leaders in your organization, what experiments do you as leaders have on the go? How far out are your experiments? In other words, we're trying to implement, say, using the media by coaching our superintendents on those projects. Good. What are you looking for results? How far along are you on those projects? These are very specific questions that I think you guys are working on right now. So that's great. Way to go, Brian. Thank you.
Anybody else? I would say that I think my one takeaway from this chapter is around the whole operational excellence thing, and it ties in a bit of the discussion we've had. And obviously people are at the center, and that does require some passion as well as that disciplined approach. And it is all around thinking. And so, like, my challenge has always been, well, okay, I see, that's clear, but now what? And really, I think it comes down to all of our people more clearly understanding, and seeing and having a clear link to our organizational vision and what our customers want. And really that led me to the section in your book about vertical versus horizontal organizations, and how we manage that, and why that's important. And this was my favorite part of this chapter, was the disconnected versus connected processes. And if we've got disconnected processes where we only see the stuff in our bubble and we're not seeing down the line how what we do can impact our organization or the customer, then how the heck can we even make decisions and figure out ways to improve stuff if we don't even have that connection? And I think that's one of the challenges I see in a lot of our districts, and I even have myself looking up towards my leadership and our company of that true alignment of what matters, what matters to our customers, and having that drive what I do, and leveraging that passion I'd have and my approach.
All right. Eric, I want to say one more thing, if you'll permit me, and then I'd love it if you did a plus delta for me at some point, even by email. You guys send me the email. I want to improve continually. But here's the last thing I got to say. A lot of companies forget the real catalyst and the real goal behind lean. And let me tell you what it is. If I had to say it in one sentence, it would be to develop the coach's coach. So think of this. You're not developing somebody to become a coach. You're developing them to be a coach of other coaches. A second coach, if you will. And these second coaches are the real point where you get the tipping point in an organization for, number one, consistency in disciplined problem solving, number two, the transference of knowledge, and the creation of standards in your organization. So one of the things I would do for a coach, just to give you guys an idea, is I would sit in a meeting and observe the coach's style, not say a word, and then give them a report card on what they could have done better, so that the coach is continually improving. I would be a second coach. You guys should all become second coaches. That would be my vision for you, and my goal, if you were, say, to engage a coach in the process. Make sure they recognize that they should be treating you as a coach for others, not coaching you as a learner. There's a whole different set of skills that somebody needs in that area. Okay, if there's nothing else, thank you guys for having me. I'll send you the video soon.
Thank you so much for your time, George.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, George.